All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Jen, would you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Riddle.
Here.
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Waldron.
Here.
And Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Appearances and acknowledgments. Acknowledge a petition for the vacation of the street and set a date of hearing for the portion of Northeast 10th Street. Chad, would you like to address that, please?
Yes, thank you. I can mention a few things. The petition, I know Jen had worked hard with the applicant in the petition as well, so maybe she can add some things at the end. But my understanding is, if you look in the agenda packet, there is a two-page petition with an attached Exhibit A, and then also another page that seems like an excerpt from an email. You can see the email one probably shows it the best. The area that is requested to be vacated is shown on that, again, the reference in that email. It says vacate 10th Street.
Mm-hmm.
If you can see that on there, this is just the petition or the first part of the process that's outlined in the statutes that adjacent landowners, the first part of the process that adjacent landowners have an opportunity to pursue to vacate property, in which case it would, if it all passes after there's a notice, some notices provided, and then a hearing, and then typically a resolution to be considered by the commission. After that process, it reverts to private property.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the first part of that. And then as far as some additional background, I had talked with Dakota State and Corey Braskamp and others in particular about them seeking to vacate this. For all extensive purposes, it's used right now just as green space, but it's I don't think anybody even knew this was not their private property there. There's a little bit of a old dedicated street, and so this just would turn it back over officially and technically to be their property should the vacation all go through.
Well, and then when you look at that street, from an actual point of view, it doesn't go anywhere.
Correct. Yeah.
It does not go west of Lee. You get into an area back there that's been developed, and then it doesn't go anywhere going east. So the only place in that it exists on paper right now is within the confines of Dakota State University.
Yep. And I didn't get into I didn't necessarily intend to get into the merits of it itself, but I would agree with you. You're starting to talk about
yes.
the discussion itself. Yes, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
It will never be described or used as a street. And so, yeah,
yeah.
I can't disagree.
So we'll set a date of hearing for July 9th. I think at 5:35 p.m. or plus or minus within that time period.
Yes, and this whole procedure is as per SDCL 94510 and 94511.
Mm-hmm.
We acknowledge this evening petition as received from Attorney Erickson. We published this twice, 2 consecutive weeks in a row, so 3 weeks from this evening. I do expect Mr. Erickson and Mr. Krusmark on behalf of Dakota State University to be present.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, as Chad stated, a resolution will be part of the process for you to approve, please.
So do we have a motion to acknowledge?
I'll make a motion we acknowledge the petition for vacation of street and set date of hearing for July 9th, 5:35 for portion of Northeast 10th Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anything that anyone wants to remove from the consent calendar? If not, do we have a motion?
Make a motion we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Seeing no old business under new business, accept the Wellmark 3-Point Play Program Grant Award. And Mike McGilvery, would you like to address that, please?
I think you guys have all probably heard that the city received a grant through Brookings from Walmart Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we have presented it last week for $17,060. So we presented it to the park board. And to receive the money, we have to have it in our minutes that you guys accept it or decline it, from my understanding. And we can use it for next year, so we're gonna apply for grants, and that'll help us with our 50/50 match and stuff. The park board wants to move forward with it towards Memorial Park replacement playground, to replace the playground, some new equipment and stuff, is what the park board advised us to do with it. Several people from the public have approached me on this same issue.
So what can I ask?
Absolutely.
So Mike, Wellmark, they're okay if we use their money as a match for
Correct.
another grant
Correct.
as well?
Correct.
That is
We
correct.
just have to use that money to something for everybody in the community can have access
Yep.
to it. So you can't put it into one baseball field, or you can't put it into one softball field,
Yep.
or you can't do a soccer complex. So every kid will play on it. And then we're gonna apply for the land conservation grant, and it should be opening up in July or August. We've been in touch with First District, Jennifer has been with Ed Hayter, and then Randy Kittle on top of it.
It's my understanding that we simply need commission action, please, to show Wellmark that the group has accepted, approved the grant, and it's okay with Wellmark if these funds aren't spent until 2019, so long as we communicate with them what the plan is.
That
Yes.
we as a commission know about it, and Mike's
Yes.
not doing something fishy.
Yes.
Likely.
No, it says here from bike trails to playgrounds, and so I think that'd be a perfect thing to use it for. Kelly, anything else?
No,
from
I think
your
that
area?
covers it.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Wellmark 3-Point Play Program Grant Award for the amount of $17,060.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consider the property. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, buddy.
Consider property owner sidewalk variance appeal 2016 sidewalk improvement project. And I see Mike is here. Mike, would you want to address the council?
I'm here to plead my case again. I know the sidewalk committee didn't like my variance, but I'm here to give you a few examples. Right now, the proposed sidewalk is gonna end up being, just round numbers, 10 feet from my front window. Okay, if I can have it out by the curb, they'll give me an extra 5 feet. The safety issue is brought up. Well, so I just drove around town just before I came to the meeting. On Union Street, between 4th and 5th, by the water tower, there's 300 and some feet of sidewalk that's right next to right next to the street. Okay? Well, in Bachman Park, where's the sidewalk? Right next to the old Highway 34. Go down Washington Avenue, starting at Southeast 4th Street, and go all the way to the bypass on the west side of the street. Sidewalk's right next to the street. Then there was another item that was brought up at the committee meeting, saying, it's zigzags and all this other stuff. Well, go on North Liberty between 6th and 7th, and it changes 14 times. So, I'm requesting that we could, put the sidewalk out by the curb, and I've got enough room on the street side of my trees. Another issue is brought up about snow removal. Well, snow removal isn't a problem. And right now, on the south side of my house, the sidewalk is 5 feet from the curb, like the sidewalk committee wanted me to have it. I still can't clean it with a shovel, because 9th Street gets cleaned and it gets windrowed over. I mean, I'm not complaining or anything, that's just a fact of life. But I can't shovel it, so I just bring my skid steer up and do it. So, I mean, the safety issue in my mind is kind of a moot point. Snow removal, same thing. It's not an issue. We're gonna, I'm gonna have to trim up the trees. Well, in my letter of explanation, you know, I know, you know, this is a long time ago, 1985, 6, you know, but I had Bill Heyer up there and I said, I want to plant my trees here, and he goes, I don't see a problem, he says, because you own all this property, he said, you know, when you develop it, or if you develop it, then we'll worry about putting a sidewalk in. And now, you know, now we have a problem, or I have a problem. So I request that we can get the sidewalk, you know, next to the curb.
Okay, having been on the sidewalk committee since its inception, when Mayor Huners reestablished it, and that we put it as as far away as we can from the curb, as long as it's on city property. And the city property line is shown on here, you know, back quite a distance in that from the curb. And so the 5 foot that's requested here, to me, fits within that city property rights and that quite well. Now, down when you on some of those that you talk about, the right-of-way ends, and so the sidewalk went in as far as it could. And you're talking Prostralos, in front of Prostralos there. The city portion of the property line doesn't go back as far. And the same thing on some of these others. In visiting with Chad and doing the measurements, the inside of the sidewalk as proposed would be 11 foot 4 inches from your house.
Yeah, so around 10 feet.
Yeah, and so there are other homes that go by, you know, by the side of their homes even closer than that in town, you know. So, and then up in that area, you know, I know people say, you know, well, put it right by the curb and that will take care of the snow. They don't, and they don't have the equipment to, and they don't want to pay to have it done. And so it does create a problem in that for the city, you know. And where north of you have the apartments, I don't know how many people will walk from there down, but I guess one of the things that I take into consideration is that I don't know how many kids that are up there that walk down to the school, but it would be preferred if they were able to walk down on the sidewalk rather than walk down on the street, you know. So
Will they be able to walk down on the sidewalk? I have to put one in, so.
but if it's covered with snow because the plows came through and you haven't had a chance to get it moved, you know, and then it also builds up ice right along the edge of the curb where 5 feet further in, you know, it's usually not as deep, you know. And on some of these other roads, such as Washington Avenue, because of the agreement that has been done, you know, with the city, and that we haul the snow out. So it does not get bladed onto the sidewalk there. It gets bladed to the middle of the street and then hauled out of town, you know, and you helped with that last winter, you know. So here, it's not an area where we do that. Here, it's an area where it's pushed off to the sides, you know, and left. So I guess that's where my thoughts are is, you know, I've looked at it and I concur with the sidewalk committee's recommendation, you know, so.
Well, I have a question. Why did the city at Bachman Park put the sidewalk next to Highway 34?
Because we couldn't put it any further unless we went way down into the park, and then we had drainage issues and that with the storm sewers and that drained down through there. And so it was done there just as a matter of convenience. Would it have been preferred to have been farther? Absolutely. Absolutely.
We were hoping at Bachman Park we could actually put like a
Put it down
multi-use path
in the park.
and do that, but we didn't have the money the budget to do that when we redid the road. Would have been nice, but
How do we address up by the water tower then? They just put a new sidewalk in there.
That sidewalk has been in there for as long as I can remember in Madison, and I think they just did it as a part of the repair process.
Was it because of the elevation change? It would have been.
Well, the
really
elevation
expensive.
change is high there too,
steep
between that and the
bank, yeah.
street.
There isn't a lot of curbside sidewalk that's working out really well, I don't think.
No, the only ones that do are on, you know, Highway 34 where we haul the snow out. Because there, instead of pushing it to the side, it's pushed to the center and then, you know, loaded and hauled out of town.
I don't think, in my case, the snow removal is not an issue.
But to the next owner, it may be.
What's
And
the
then-
next owner, though?
Well,
I mean, if by
that
that time,
we never know.
we might have an apartment house in the back, you know.
Well, you have an apartment house back there now, Amherst Apartments are behind
Yeah,
you.
but my other 180 feet.
Sure. On this lot or the one further up the street?
Right behind my house.
Right behind your house, okay? So,
Right, the drawing that you have in front, my house is there, and I
Yes.
own the concrete to the. on
all the way up to the
Correct.
driveway,
To the
certainly.
north. To the north.
To the
Yeah.
north.
Yeah, and I think in that case, and that the sidewalk should still be as recommended by the sidewalk committee. Because if you have an apartment there and that, you know, that would make it easier for them and safer for them to be further away from the curb. I also have a bias that goes way back in that I have a cousin who was on a sidewalk as a little 3-year-old. And the car jumped the curb, hit him, and he did not survive it. And had the sidewalk been further away, it may have been a better safety issue.
So then the South Dakota Department of Transportation has no idea about safety on sidewalks then? 'Cause
This
off
is-
R34, we have sidewalks running right
We
next to the
do.
curb, and they're doing 30 miles an hour.
We didn't have any
Understood.
say on that one.
And it's because we don't have any say in that, and that's where the property line ends. Because they've widened the highway, you know.
I understand you
Sure.
don't have any say in it, but I mean,
Right.
South Dakota Department of Transportation doesn't want people getting killed either. What I'm saying
Understood,
is a safety
and
issue, I think
and
is-
they push it back as far as they can. And here, we could push it back further because, you know, the actual property line is closer to your house than where the sidewalk is proposed to go. But because we have the 5-foot, you know, set standard, we try to meet it in every possible way we can. So,
Can I ask a question?
certainly.
Chad, up on 8th and Chicago, if I remember right, that new sidewalk was put right behind the curb. Why couldn't have that went in behind the hedge and the bushes up there on 8th and Chicago,
Trying to think,
where Fran Bruns used to live?
was that on Chicago, the Chicago
Yeah.
part?
Yeah. No, not on gravel park, blacktop, right across from the doggy park.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to think of where you're talking about. At the very north end of that block?
Yeah.
Is it the north end of
Yeah.
that block on the east side of the road?
Yeah,
I don't know if we had our policy that we have in place right now, if that was in place or not, where that party would have had to go through a variance process similar to this. You know, about 5 to 7 years ago, I should have had the dates, I apologize. This resolution was passed that, I might have even referenced it here, 2684 was passed. We tried to set forth some procedures and policies as far as minimum setbacks and transition rates and so on. But it also laid out a procedure for applicants to come and to have an opportunity to have due process and to be heard, you know, and such like that. So I can't recall if that one was actually went through the variance process, or if before that time it was, there was really not a good structured process in, to put in curbside sidewalk. So I can't say definitively why that was put in. If I recall correctly, there were a row of trees and a hedge there?
Yeah.
It was likely to avoid the hedge is what I suspect. Yeah, so I apologize if I don't have that before me.
The other comment that I have is, doesn't the city of Madison have an ordinance that said you have, you know, you got a certain amount of time to get the snow off the sidewalk?
We do.
I abide by that. So, I mean, even if it's a new owner, he still has to get the snow off the sidewalk, no matter where it is. So, I mean, that,
The curbside creates a bigger issue.
for
In
the
that,
landowner, and if he knows that going into it,
and also for safety, you know, because, you know,
well, you know, 5 feet, I beg to differ. I mean, 5 feet, you know, it might be a miracle, but 5 feet isn't a crisis. If the car is gonna, or the vehicle is gonna jump the curb, that 5 feet buffer I mean, how many times does that happen? I mean, how many people have been hit on Second Street since walking down the sidewalk? I mean, at 30 miles an hour.
But we do have issues with having to get out there and get people to move the snow on that.
Okay. But it isn't just sidewalks, it's sidewalks that are,
It's sidewalks anywhere in town,
Anywhere, yeah.
anywhere in town, no question.
Yep.
No question. But still, there's always that, as the snow gets pushed over there, it's not going to get hauled out here. On Second Street, it does not get pushed toward the curb. It gets pushed to the center of the highway, hauled out of town. That's not going to happen over here. This is going to be the same as my street. And in my street, in that I've got sidewalk, and mine is in the proper distance, that meets the regulations. And that area between the sidewalk and the curb is where the ice is, from when it throws it up there. And before you get to it, that area there of the grass, and that is what gathers, the ice. The sidewalk is much easier to clean. It's also much safer in that because you're not right up against the curb. So, I guess I look at it as the closest it's going to be, it appears, is going to be about 11 feet 4 inches from your house. And there's other houses in town here on the sides and in front of some, it's closer than that. So I guess I don't see a reason for the variance here. Other comments?
Was there anything you forgot to talk to the sidewalk committee about? Some compelling information that may have swayed them to go the other way? They were.
addressed all the points. Yeah.
I guess I'm looking at the extraordinary hardship, and I don't necessarily see that as far as like the movement of it. I'm all for keeping it off of the next to the road. Yeah, it keeps, as public safety commissioner, it is one of my concerns of it right on Highway 34 with 30 mile an hour traffic. I mean, it makes me nervous about it. I'm sure it does our police force as well. And I know of times people were walking, running along Highway 34, slip, and if you slip, you're going to be in the street. Whereas if you slip from somebody that doesn't shovel it, what I'm saying is those that aren't good citizens to clear their sidewalks in proper time. There again, that takes time then for our law enforcement to go out, and then they have to go and ask them to clear it, and I mean, that's just all expenses and everything. But if you're within there, and you don't shovel it, at least you're still, the 5 feet or 3 feet or as far as you can be, in and at least you're away from that road. So, and it looks like the committee here is, we're not taking out any trees. I know that's come up in the past many times, and we try to accommodate that and circle around those. So I guess I don't see the extraordinary hardship, Mike. I just don't.
The only other point I got is the guy 2 blocks to the east of me, this is 18 inches from the curb.
And again, we can only make them put it to the property line. We can't make people put it on their property, but we do have some property owners in town that their property line was so close to that they did give permission to put the proper sidewalks on their property.
Yeah, this wasn't the case at this point.
Sure.
This
Okay.
is an employee of mine.
Okay.
So.
So where the property line is.
Yeah, I've talked to him.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then the question is when was it put in? And
That one was a Casanova. That one was before we established standards, and
Yeah.
it was kind of.
well, and in Casanova's case, in that and I'm using his name out there, but in his case, in that, there were trees that he didn't want to remove, and so that's why it makes those jogs around the trees.
No, that isn't the case. The case is that he put the sidewalk in, the contractor put the sidewalk in, and the city engineer didn't like it, so the contractor tore it out. They relocated it. It wasn't that that the trees were the issue. And the city actually paid for the other 18 inches of concrete. If you go past this place, it's concrete from the curb.
It is,
to the
and that was his
property.
request, not the city's.
Well, he didn't pay for it.
I don't know on that one.
Been a long time ago, I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I remember the issue, but I don't know who paid the,
Separate issue.
it
I-
was a separate issue.
And I think, unfortunately, then city engineer hire, somewhat like he said, okay, now if you look to develop it or something, then, and it appears like where the trees are at are okay because we're able to work around them.
The red dots represent the tree stumps.
Got it,
So I
thank
think
you.
the trees will be able to be trimmed up, and none will have to be put down if it's put on the east side of the sidewalk. Excuse me, the east side of the trees.
Is there an ordinance, Chad, on how close the sidewalks can be to a person's house?
No, it just says that it shall be in the public right of way.
And in a number of cases in that, there have been variances in that, for shrubs that are in place. There have been variances, and there was a variance up on, I'm going to say 5th, because, putting it all the way in would have put it closer to the house, but it was moved to go around the trees, so you may have some that are 4 feet in, so that's why the variance process is there. And so as you go around town, you're going to find not all the sidewalks are perfectly straight, and the sidewalk committee has worked with the property owners to come up with a reasonable solution, in cases in that, and one of them that I can think of is up off Prairie, where they had put in a concrete circle around the trees. And so the sidewalk is adjusted to go around that, so that's what the variance process was meant to be. Not to have people be forced to take out shrubs or cut down trees or, move things, and we have a number of those in town, a number of variances that have been approved. And there was a hardship reason, for those. I'm lacking seeing it here. I'm just seeing it more as a personal preference than an actual issue. So.
I guess I'd like to see this be tabled for a couple weeks because of the public safety of it's only 10 feet away from this guy's house. I know I wouldn't want a sidewalk that close to my front window. Then we could discuss with the sidewalk committee and get back. What's your, Commissioner Corbin,
Do you want to table it to talk to the sidewalk committee?
Sidewalk committee already reported
Well,
on it.
They've been through it twice. They've made their decision, now it's up to us.
If you want to table it for this group,
Yeah,
you can. We don't
Yeah.
need to-
Okay.
yeah, they've already made their decision, so now it's up to here. Do we do a variance on a personal preference, or do we do a variance because it's creating a hardship around something that exists? And I guess I don't see 11'4" as a hardship like like some of the other homes that have the sidewalks closer to their houses, just because that's where the house is. So.
Do you have an address? I mean, I'd like to drive by this. I've been through town. I don't know of anybody that's got a sidewalk as close to their house as mine.
What was that one address?
And I mean, you don't have to I would like to drive by it. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't want to.
talk with Chad afterwards, rather than make it public notice.
Yes.
Bob, do you want to move that, or do you?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we table this for a week, and so we got more time to look at this situation.
I'll second that.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
I'm going to ask Jen for a roll call because I don't know how those fell together.
All right, Commissioner Corbin,
Nay?
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Waldner,
Nay.
Commissioner Thel,
Aye.
and Mayor Lundy.
Nay. So we are back to our current discussion on the sidewalk as proposed by the Sidewalk Committee. Now, I'm going to throw something else out, for the commission to consider. As I'm looking at the drawing down here, as it comes down, and on the west side of the Johnson house, I would not be opposed if the sidewalk went a foot closer toward the curb, past the house, and then came back to the 5-foot area. So it would go along like this, move out a little, another foot, and then move back in. That would make it 12'4" from the side of the house. And yet it would still leave it 4 foot from the curb in that area.
You want that whole straight run to be 4 feet? Or just the part by the house?
Just the part, just as you get down near the house and going past the house.
What would be easier to put in, Chad? Would it be, Corbin, you're saying like run the whole thing 4 foot until
Well, once
we
it gets
gotta-
past the trees, break
Yep,
down.
and then make the variance there? I'd
And
be
I would
okay
not
with
be
that,
opposed,
too.
I would not be opposed to that either. That would give you an additional foot, and yet it would also keep it from being curbside.
That might be about our best compromise for it.
How palatable is that for you, Mr. Johnson?
I appreciate, the offer. I'll counter. Could we go 3 feet?
3.5?
375.
Three and a half would make it approximately 13 feet then, from the house.
I knew I should have went 2.
We move 2 feet away from the house. In other words, the sidewalk is 2 foot further away from his house.
2 foot further away
Okay.
from his house.
If we did that,
How much?
is it easier to just do the full run, so then it's a straight rather than jogging and then jogging back? I mean, what would you rather do? Just do a I would think
If that's the only choice I got, we could keep it at 3.5, we just jog clear up, and then when we get, close to the trees, we, do a decent
Yep,
angle.
then you got the angle for the
Kind of like
variance.
that
and then-
taper we're showing here, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
5 to 1.
And then you come on the east side of the trees and just like it's showing here, so. I'd be okay with 3.5. I'd much rather have the 4, just 'cause it's a better way to do it, but.
Chad, do you see any issues with that?
No, it's the same discussion we have, fairly regularly on these, is like you've already articulated. with the
I could
snow.
live with 3.5.
Yeah.
Should we go 4 and then nobody's happy?
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go 3.5 feet up to the trees, and then we zag in at 5.
Going on the east side of the trees like drawn?
Going
and then
on
you're gonna
the
let
east
'em
side,
go
just like the
3.5
drawing
from the
said.
curb? I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so work with Chad on that and we'll move forward. Okay,
Sounds fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3, consider peddler's license application, Parker and Parker Dynasty. And is there anyone in the room here that wanted to speak to that? If not, I'll ask Jen to address it.
There was supposed to be, and we were assured someone would be here this evening. But since there's not, as part of your package, you do have a letter from the president of the company, along with the completed application. Their request is to peddle from tomorrow through Friday. You need to stop back in our office and pay the fees. And all of the sales tax information, the other documents that we do require with these licenses have been submitted.
Okay. Have you had any questions or anything?
No, I always hold my same opinion. I don't like door-to-door peddlers in our town. They just cause more work for our police department. So, and it's certainly if they're not here, they're from California. I have no idea who these people are, and so
Well, they have an Illinois licensed vehicle.
it makes them even, you know. I mean, it's a California company with Illinois. I mean, it's just crazy. Then it, you know, if there are problems, and obviously on the federal side, we can't stop them.
Jen, I'm assuming there have been no complaints about the company.
As of, no, not to us directly.
Yep.
Chief Meyer, no?
Have they
Not yet.
peddled historically?
Right.
They peddled historically
No,
here?
they have not, sorry,
Never.
I've never heard of this entity.
I'll make a motion to approve the peddler's license application for Parker and Parker Dynasty.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, seeing no announcements, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are now in executive session.